So, hi guys. I'm going to go ahead and get started because it's half after and I'm supposed to do this all in 20 minutes, which this is a huge topic to do in 20 minutes. So I'm actually kind of going to go more along the lines of one of the things I find a lot of times when I work with parents is kind of understanding their teens and why they do and act the way they do. So the goal I'm going to kind of do is a little bit of biology in the front. It's really short, like 4 minutes of it, kind of talking about physical development, why do they do, what goes on with their brains, and then I'm going to talk about some psychosocial development, and then I'm going to go into kind of some general management ways to manage kids and things that you can try differently. And again, these are kind of some general pearls I've seen before that a lot of parents kind of may get right, some of them right and some of them not so right. So that's kind of the idea. Some of it may apply to you, some of it may not. Also, with some of the biology I'm talking about, a lot of this research is new. So if in 5 years we find out we're wrong, this is just what we know at the kind of the state of this day and age. Okay, so, all right, let's talk about the brain. All right, so really the only thing I'm going to really need you to know about is the prefrontal cortex and the frontal lobe, but specifically the prefrontal cortex. That is the part of your brain that is responsible for decision making, planning, long-term consequences, kind of interpreting social cues, and the important part is it doesn't get fully developed into your 20s. Now developed means it's fully grown well before that, but myelination, pruning, all of that stuff doesn't finish until you're in your 20s. Which, this is kind of a great, the more blue it is, the more myelinated and fully grown. So if this is a 5-year-old, this is adolescence, lots of green, more green, blue, blue, blue. This is 20. Huge changes in growth, myelination, pruning, all that stuff, in the years of your teenage, which is a big, big deal, which I'll get to in a little bit. Okay, this is the limbic system. Pretty picture, mostly just to show you what it looks like, but the important part is what does it do? So this is the limbic system in teenagers, tends to be actually kind of more emotional, tends to be emotional processing and your reward center. So teenagers, we actually have found that this part of their brain is actually more active. They're more sensitive to reward, hence why they tend to be a little more risk-taking. They tend to have that positive response more so than an adult. We're not sure exactly why, at least I didn't see any studies. It is more, like I said, it is actually developed by this point in your growth. So what does this mean? What does a teen brain look like? Lots of different problems. This is just a joke, but I'm just kidding. This is a joke to lighten it up a little bit. So that's the sciencey part. And I'm going to come back to all of this. I'm going to tie it all together in just a minute, but I want to talk about the social development as well. So that's the biological development. Then we have the social development. This is a wordy slide. You don't have to worry about it. I'm just using it. This is one of multiple ways of classifying how we develop socially as kids. Okay, this is Erickson's psychosocial stages of summer. There's lots of different ones, but this one kind of illustrated my point. These are two. This is actually the slide that's important. So school age, 6 to 11. When you're 6 to 11, kind of what your social task, as we understand it in this particular model, is what we call industry versus inferiority. Can you go out? Can you socially navigate school age things? Can you do school? Can you succeed? The idea is can you feel like you can accomplish tasks? The important thing is adolescence, 12 to 18. Your social job is to become identity versus role confusion. Who are you? Your job at that age is to separate from your parents and become who you're going to be. So that is actually your social job, which frustrates the tar out of parents sometimes because, here's your kid who's doing all these things. Their brain isn't really great developed, but you have less and less influence on them. Their peers are more important to them. It's kind of the dichotomy. So what does this all kind of come together? So, like I said, what do you see? Well, you have this kid who, he can do calculus, he can do math. They're really, really smart. Their brain has grown enough that they can do abstract thinking. They can even understand long-term consequences if they're not emotional. If they can sit there and they talk to you, you can understand everything they're saying. They can problem solve. However, their emotional capacity does not match up with their intellectual capacity. They tend to be sensation-seeking, risk-taking. One thing I didn't put up there is I did put up there, sorry. They can, some studies have shown that teenagers will misinterpret social cues. They will see anger when it's not there. It's pretty common that they will kind of misread social cues And that's part of the brain development part, we think, versus experience. But so you have this almost dichotomous relationship where on one side, when they're calm, they're very reasonable. But they can also get very, very emotional, and they tend to think with their gut a lot more because, again, that's the part of what's developed for them. So what do we do? Okay, so this is what most people want to know. How do we approach this? Okay, so one of the things I always do is when I'm working with kids and teenagers as a psychiatrist, I will oftentimes check in. You know, I've seen this so many times where I've had one parent say something to a teenager, and the teenager starts to go, I go, wait a minute, whoa, what did you just hear her say? And what the teenager will repeat back will have absolutely nothing to do with what the parent just said. So whenever you're in a conversation, make sure you are both in the same conversation. And I've seen parents do that too, by the way. You know, anyone can get emotional and misinterpret things. So, you know, we're not immune to this either. But very, very common. So, and no, it may seem a little weird, but definitely, if you are having a conversation with a teen that doesn't, you know, check in. What are you hearing me saying? What do you hear what my worries are? Tell me what you think of, and don't just like, yeah, I understand you. No. Okay, repeat it back. Tell me what you're thinking and we're talking about. I want to make sure we're on the same page. The second thing is I told you how we don't have a lot of, as they become teenagers, we have less direct influence because they're peers and so on and so forth. However, our most powerful influence on our children are how we model. I have seen so many times where parents will say, well, don't yell, don't do this, but then I'll see them yelling and sniping at each other. What you model is the most powerful influence on your children. Not what you say, what you do. So if you get upset, if you fly off the handle, they're going to. No matter how much, don't yell at me, if you do it, they're going to do it. So we have to model the behavior we want to see. And it's hard sometimes to have that introspective look. This is where your mental health part comes in. It's hard sometimes to have that introspection and realize that what we're doing might be contributing to what's going on. And again, not to say it's all bad. It's not like making a bad parent means we're human. We're all human. We all struggle with things. Just being aware of what you're struggling with and how it may be impacting them. Do not invalidate. Now, you know, a lot of times teenagers will be just small things. You're like, it was, you know, I get a B. Or he broke up with you. You've been dating for 2 weeks. You know, to us that might not be anything, but don't go, it's okay, you know, just get over it. You'll be fine. You know, don't invalidate that emotional experience because this is all new to them. These are, again, they're all exploring these things, and it's hard to remember the first time you ever had someone break up or the first time. These things can be really important to them. So, you know, go, hey, is that hard? Talk to me. You know, how can I help? Let's go do this. You know, don't sit there and just blow it off. I've seen that a lot because then that makes it even worse for them to come talk to you because if you invalidate their emotional responses, it's always going to be hard for teenagers to talk to parents. The more you invalidate, the harder it's going to be for them. And the other one on this slide that I really want to make sure I talk about is sleep. And now, that actually is a 20-minute lecture in of itself. But the gist of it is teenagers' sleep cycles are set to go to bed at 11 or 12-ish. They're set to go to bed later and sleep later, just naturally. In fact, the American Academy of Pediatrics just last month put out a recommendation that schools start later. We're putting our kids up way too early for them to be functioning based on their natural biorhythms. And like I said, they literally just put that out, I think, last month. And that's been lots of studies have shown that. So work with kids, go home, Google sleep hygiene. There's lots of different things you can do to help them sleep, lots of habits. I highly recommend it because your mental health, sleep is one of your a vital sign when it comes to psychiatry. It's one of the first questions I will ask every time. How are you sleeping? Because they may say they're not depressed, they may not say they're anxious, but if they come across and tell me I'm not sleeping, I'm like, okay, tell me what's going on, because that is almost always one of the first signs. All right. Be compassionate, understanding, and firm. So being a compassionate, understanding parent is not a permissive parent. Okay, you don't want to be permissive, but you don't want to be authoritarian. You want to be authoritative. It's just kind of that middle road. Okay. So the compassion part is, like I said, they want to separate from you. So the key here is, you want to let them separate. You want to let them do things, but you still need to spend time with them. Their peers are important. Have their peers over for dinner. You know, they're going to push, oh, no, Dad, Mama, no, Dad, but no. Keep working. Have dinner together. Do something. Have things that you spend time. Kids who do well have high parental involvement, positive parental involvement. Not controlling, but be involved in the activities they enjoy. You know, meet them where they're at and also understand what they enjoy is a moving target. Again, this is kind of them identifying themselves. So keep working. So, oh, you don't like Pokemon anymore? Fine. Let's go do something else. That was last week. Maybe you want to go hiking. Maybe you want to go and just always ask. And that's a hard thing to do. Allow them to explore. On the other hand, like I said, they're trying to identify. Pick your fights. You know, if they want to dye their hair purple and wear all black, let them. This is not, you know, if they want to drop out of school and get tattoos on their face, okay, that's, you know, it's about like what's long term. Let them explore individually who they are within limits. And this is the hardest part, is having moving limits, which leads to the next one, is limits and rules. Limits and rules, you know, when the kids are younger, you can kind of say, because I told you so, which I still don't ever encourage. But really, when they're learning to grow into adults, you should be willing to discuss the rules. Make sure they're very clear what you expect. Make sure that if you have to write them down, and allow them to have input. Negotiate. Be willing to discuss. Now, again, this isn't like giving in to them. You still have to set limits, but discuss with them what they think is reasonable. You know, have it be back and forth. Have them involved in the conversation. And the next page is on consequences, but I want to bring this part up, is that when there's limits and rules, engage them in the consequences. You know, discuss, so okay, you know, these are the rules. What do you think? If this isn't, you know, if you're going to bring them in, say, what do you think we should do if this doesn't work? You know, if you come home late from curfew, what's reasonable? If you're 5 minutes late, like maybe your curfew is shorter 30 minutes every day for the next week. But, you know, engage them in it. Now, don't let them, oh, well, then that means I have to do dishwasher an extra time. You know, don't, but be reasonable. And this is part of the negotiation and working with them with what you're comfortable as your parent. But the more you engage them in it, the more they'll have buy-in, the less kind of that headbutting you'll have if they feel like they have a say. I mean, if nothing else you take away from this, I guess I would say listen to your teenager. Let them feel heard and actually not just sit there and nod, but actually process what they say. That will make a huge difference for them. So consequences, like I said, being firm and understanding. But one of the other things I see a lot of times, and this may seem subtle at first point, but I've seen it as a psychiatrist to be very, very powerful. You don't say, you know, you're horrible, or God, how could you do that? That was so stupid. You say, that behavior is unacceptable. You separate it from them. You say, you know, I love you, but this behavior is not acceptable. You know, this irresponsible action I cannot allow to have going on. You kind of want to separate it. It allows it, because again, remember, teenagers have a lot of emotional responses to things. You don't want to, it's a very useful tool to kind of make it not activate that emotional anger response where they stop listening. Which comes to the next part, is that if you are setting consequences for something that goes on, maintain calm. If your teenager flies off the handle, remember, you're the adult. You have the fully developed brain. Your job is to activate that frontal part of your lobe, and you maintain calm. If you guys both lose it, or if they lose it, you say, okay, we're just going to take a moment into a calm, because remember, they're not going to listen. If you overload their frontal lobe, they can't process what's going on. They're just going to respond emotionally. And you know, this is a great goal to have, but nobody's perfect. Okay? This is the goal to achieve, not to say, well, you're a bad parent if you can't do that. No, this is just what I'm trying to tell you is ideally what to shoot for. I also recognize that trying to be calm with your kids because you love them so much is very, very hard. So don't judge yourself if you don't achieve that. It's just the goal for what you're kind of shooting for, if that makes sense. I've had a lot of parents I have to say, look, you're doing the best you can. You love them. That's why you're struggling so hard with this. It's okay. But that's just the goal to achieve. And they kind of talked about this other one, but you know, make consequences reasonable. You know, I've had parents where if they violate a rule, you know, oh, you're 5 minutes late from curfew, you don't get to go out for the next 3 weeks at all. I've had parents do that. They consider, and it's just because that's where they were raised. and that's like what they thought is possible. You know, they're being firm and they're being, you know, setting limits and making, these are, you know, there's real consequences. It's not like they're bad parents, they just need a little coaching sometimes, and maybe what would work better, because you have too strict limits, they're going to just rebel more and more and more. On the other side, don't be too permissive. You know, again, it's that whole balancing act of being within limits. And I already talked about negotiating contracts with teens. What else? So, what about you? All right. So one of the things I've seen a lot of times, and there have been multiple studies that have demonstrated this as a psychiatrist, that if the parents are suffering, the kids are going to suffer. I have seen many times where I'll have a kid come into my office, and it is a non-pathological reaction to a pathological situation at home. And it can be as simple as the parents are fighting. They might not even be fighting in front of the kids. I've had parents go, yeah, you know, my husband and I aren't doing so well, but you know, we don't fight in front of the kids. I'm like, the kids know. You can read your children, your children can read you, your family members. If there's tension or there's problems going on, or mom's struggling with depression or anxiety, these things will have an impact on your kids because they can read you. They don't know they're reading you, they have no idea that they're doing it, but they respond to what's going on in the home, even if it's not conscious, even if it's not out there. If there's someone who's upset, if there's tension, that kind of thing. So again, studies have shown, we treat the parents, the kids get better. If the parents are struggling, if they're the ones who need the help and we get them the help, the kids get better. So a lot of times it's hard to kind of own when it's not, you know, you just see your kid acting out, and it's always hard for us to own some of our own stuff. It's part of like being a good psychiatrist, a therapist, is kind of, a lot of us have our own training about how to make sure we are aware of our own stuff. And that's really hard to do sometimes. I know that, but it's your kid. That's sometimes can pay the price if we don't do that. So not just, you know, depression, but stress. If job is tough, if you're worried about finances, you know, be aware. And don't talk about, if you're having financial problems, don't talk about it in front of the kids. You know, things like that. So like I said, managing your own difficulties, own them, and they'll help your kids. And then we sort out what the difference is. So that's about 20 minutes. So I'm going to talk about kind of different resources in the community, and so I can leave a couple minutes for questions. I have other slides if we had more time, but about like when you want to be worried, but I don't think I have time to do those. But so Juvenile Justice Advisory Board, which I always have to tell parents, it has nothing to do with juvenile justice. Okay. But they have parenting classes. Now, parenting classes are not about you're a bad parent. Parenting classes are I'm a good parent, but I want to learn more. There's, again, I can't teach in 20 minutes all the different things and all the different options of what you can do. That's a huge topic. But they also have groups for kids. They have so many resources I can't keep track of. So there's some flyers outside for them. If you have a 7th grader or higher, that's the blue flyer for the Youth Resource Advocate. And I'll tell you, I have been working with Troy, with some people, and Troy is amazing. I have worked with a lot of people in my years as a psychiatrist. He is absolutely, I've seen him go above and beyond, and things he has done and helped these kids, absolutely amazing. Sarah and Amy are also great, though I haven't worked with them as much, so I can't give, but my impression is they are both, all three of them are amazing, amazing people, and they have, if there's something you need, anything for the parent, anything for the kid, like I said, groups, mindfulness groups, lots of different things. They are the go-to resource I send parents to because they know everything that's going on in town. And they send me things and I can never keep track of what they have. So they're an awesome resource. So like I said, 7th through 12th is the blue one, and then the 6th through 12 is the family resource, or 6th and under, excuse me. 6th grade and under is the green one. Family Strengths Network is also great, and the reason I'm bringing this is they had Families in Action class for teens and parents, which I had not actually heard of, and I read about when they came and talked about it. Amazing class. If you can get the kid to it, everyone loves it. It's basically a class that really just, we talk about communication and making things work well, and apparently I know the guy, I've met the guy who does it, and he's apparently very, very cool, and lots of really great reviews from what I've heard from that. They started it last Thursday. I don't know if they had enough families to make it, but call them. They also have lots of other resources. I don't have one of their flyers. And the last thing, the Los Alamos Family Council, I've got a couple of their flyers. They also have some other resources that I'm not as familiar with. But these are different resources, and frankly, came from Albuquerque where I did my fellowship training down there, and I didn't have resources or people to go to like this. I had to go to the people in the hospital who had, while there might have been a lot more things, but as concise and easy to access for parents, this is really, really awesome. So I highly recommend it. So that's what I have. Questions about anything? I know I went through a lot pretty fast.
I work on the third floor in the sleep center,
Okay.
and you talked a little bit about sleep and whatnot. So as a psychiatrist, do you do any sort of screening? Do you see a lot of teens that have?
Oh, absolutely. So one of the biggest problems I see in any mental health as an adult or child is sleep. It is usually a secondary thing. A lot of different possible anxiety, depression, all of these things have impacts on your sleep. So I will ask about it. And I've worked with people about sleep hygiene and making their a lot of changes. I've actually had people when I've done adults who told me they've never had a good night's sleep, and after working with them several months, and they were willing to do the work. They had to do the sleep diary every night, and they had to do all the different things, and they had to put all the behavioral changes in. After like 2, 3, 4 months of really working at it, they were sleeping without drugs. You know, I don't like sleep meds. I use them when I have to, but I'm not a sleep med. I'm a very large proponent of behavioral changes when possible. You know, it depends. If you're really, really depressed and you can't sleep, that has a significant impact on your mood, then I might use a sleep med. But sleep meds are short-term solutions. They're not long-term solutions. But I don't do like, I'll send them to their primary care doctor if I'm worried about sleep apnea or something else like that. That's not something I can do.